Good afternoon, and welcome to the meeting of the Richmond Redevelopment Commission of Tuesday, February the 18th, 2025. Our first order of business today is to review the minutes from our meeting of January the 21st, 2025. You have before you revised minutes that were different than the ones that you received in your package. If you want to take a quick look at those and see if there are any changes or corrections.
I have a question. We didn't deobligate anything at the last meeting, did we?
Yes, we did.
Where is it?
Yes, it's under the financials.
Sorry.
Do you have the correct version there?
That's the one I just grabbed, I think.
It would be under the financials. I'll tell you what.
I see it now.
The changes was the
Yeah.
inclusion of the deobligation.
Thank you.
And the inclusion of the dollar amounts for resolutions number 1 and number 2.
Great, thank you.
Everything else stayed the same. Any other changes or corrections? If not, do I hear a motion?
So moved.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. I just realized that we had not gone through the formal process of calling the roll to give us a quorum. You want to just back up for a moment and do that for us, Beth?
Michael Bloom. Here. Jenny Lahman.
Here.
Kathy Lucid.
Here.
Gary Turner.
Here.
Allison Zeidel.
Here.
Nicole Stoltz.
Here.
Present.
Great. Quorum has been established. Okay, jumping then to our next item on the agenda is the financials as of January 31st, 2025. Beth, would you like to review for us?
You will note that we have indicated the expected TIF income that we will receive in June and December for this year. So that has been added to our expected income that we have there. We have also updated all of our obligations to include those recurring obligations that we have each year for professional services as well as intergovernmental services. And the other obligations that we have are the remaining balances on each of those resolutions that have been unspent at this time. We also have the addition of the resolution for Community Crossings Matching Grant, which was added and approved at our January meeting. Our bond obligations have been updated to indicate the bond payments that will be made during 2025. We've also updated the amount that we have earmarked for Richmond Community Schools capital projects. At this time, we have $1,053,000 available for Richmond Community Schools. And the earmark remains the same for the 6th and Main project. That did not change from the $3.3 million. So at this point, we have available for new projects $4,578,246.31 in our allocation area number 1 fund.
I have a quick question, and I'm sure it's been on here, and I've just missed it. It says miscellaneous income, Ice Miller bond fees. I think we would be paying Ice Miller instead of them paying us, so what is that exactly?
Correct. That is a payment that because the process for closing Project Alma took so long, we made an intermediate payment during that process because it took about 2 years to get to the closing, and typically all of the fees are paid at closing. So the Redevelopment Commission made this payment of $32,263.75 to Ice Miller, and then when the bond closed, those invoices, we were then refunded the amount that we paid because that payment actually comes from the bond proceeds.
So this isn't always on there.
No,
Okay.
no,
And that is obviously a one-time?
yes,
Okay,
yes.
thanks.
Looking at the Certified Technology Park, we have at this point $2,036,024.31. As we indicated at the last meeting, we are looking for guidance as to how we move forward with this, with no longer having a certified technology park, with all of the changes that are occurring at the state level and with the administration. I do not anticipate that we will have an answer in the very near future, but we are still working with them to get clarity on the use of these funds moving forward.
Beth, on the electronic device technology, the 253,750, and then in current period, it says 5,000. It just doesn't add up to the other amount. Is there the 48,000 somewhere, noted somewhere else? Or-
That was spent in 2024.
Okay, thank you.
Then with Johns Manville, as we see those payments continue to come in, we've updated with the anticipated TIF income that we expect to receive in 2025. At this time, we have updated the total earmarked for Richmond Community Schools. There is $200,000 available in this fund for use by Richmond Community Schools. So we have a total available for new projects of $1,759,717.67 at this point in that fund. The Heartland Fund, we have updated with the anticipated TIF revenue, and as you'll recall, with this fund, we are sending all of the funds received when they're received to the trustee for payment, with the exception of $10,000 that we retain for professional services. Same with the Midwest Industrial Park Fund. The payments have been updated for this fund, and you'll see that a payment has been made for the current period. And so then we will have one more remaining obligation for that. And this fund, as you'll remember, the payment of this is noted in our allocation area 1 in our bond section, and then those transfers are made to this fund to make those payments.
Okay. Are there any further questions or comments in regards to the financials? Hearing none, do I hear a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the financials. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Financials are approved. Thank you, Beth. Moving into our new business, we have two resolutions before us today. The first resolution is Resolution Number 3, 2025, a resolution authorizing the appropriation and expenditure of funds, Morrison Reeves Library, allocation area number 1, for $40,000. Do we have someone speaking to that today?
She's going to set us up with a few slides. I'm Dina Little. I'm the director of Morrison Reeves Library. This is Josh Imhoff. He's our engagement manager.
Welcome.
Hook us up. We have about a dozen slides to share with you regarding the current projects in regards to renovating the library in the future. And we're going to go a little bit chronologically because I want you to see what the journeys look like so far. All right. So thank you for your time this afternoon. Just push enter.
Yeah.
All right. All right, so this started about a year ago. We had introduced to the community. We're borrowing a laptop, so apologies.
We understand.
So we introduced our new strategic plan to the community last year. It was our 2023-2027. A little timing was a little tricky, but we received a lot of community feedback. Over 1,000 people participated. We had community stakeholder listening sessions, survey, both internal and external survey, our community focus groups, and then employee listening sessions. overall. And this was not just in terms of the services for the library, but also the building. The building is about 50 years old, and we received a lot of feedback in regards to the service in the building. Specifically, regards to services were like computer and technology. These were all things that were very important to the community. Obviously, our youth area from 0 to 18, our teen area. Local history and genealogy, our study rooms, which speaking statistically is significant. I'd say about 33% use increased every single year for our study rooms and our meeting rooms. The community is seeking space to come and have meetings, have business meetings, have book clubs, committees, this type of thing. So we're definitely growing out of our space in terms of our study rooms and our meeting spaces. People are seeking interactive and engaging spaces. And then small business space, and this is something that's a little bit unique, and we've learned a little bit more about that in our process of our master plan, and that is recognizing that the community is really invested in small businesses, and they use the library for a lot of the resources. So space, having meetings, not necessarily having a building business, but using the library as that space to have meetings and making phone calls and this and that, but also printing, faxing, lamination. So as we start thinking of our future space, we're looking into investing in a business center for small businesses in our community. So this was a lot of feedback that we got in terms of what is the library, how does we serve the community, what is the community looking for? So part of the strategic plans was say, well, we know we want to improve this space. What's actually going on with the facility right now? And that kind of takes us to step 2. So in spring of last year, I went a little bit too far. Thank you. So last year, we hired Kevin McCurdy from LWC. He's a local architect. And we hired him to perform what's called a facility assessment. It's essentially to look at the entire building structurally, hire engineers, have them come in and look at not just the building itself, but the life cycle of the components in the building, HVAC, plumbing, electricity, everything under the sun from the roof to the bottom. We have about a 53,000 square foot building, so it's a lot of building. It was rebuilt in 1973. Many of you may remember the existing building before that. And then the Children's Edition was in 1994. Outside of that, that's been pretty much the big renovations. We've had some design renovations inside in the early, 2015, 2016, but that's been some of the big renovations in the past. So we haven't really seen a major update since 1973 in terms of building structure. The feedback from the facility assessment was very surprising. We had anticipated most of the design future of the library to be service design and fun and functionality. A lot of it's really about the building itself. The discovery was the entire envelope of the building is kind of falling apart. It's at end of use. The masonry, when it was built, wasn't built for it doesn't weep appropriately, doesn't have drainage appropriately. So this is not necessarily an urgent issue, but as we start receiving feedback from the facility assessment, we're discovering that some of the renovation in our future is actually more immediate. So you'll see in these pictures especially, is there a little, there's not. Oh yeah, you can you see the little, oh yeah, you can. So you'll see right here that there's kind of this metal piece that sits underneath the brickwork. It's starting to rust and fall apart. You'll see they took some of the brickwork out, and the brick itself is actually not sitting appropriately anymore on what's kind of like a lintel. And then on the north side especially, if you get up close, you'll see cracks in the structure. So this is telling us that some of these big plans we're seeing in the future are actually a little bit more immediate and a little bit more have to do with the structure itself. And as I was saying, the north side is more challenging, advantageous to, there's no people walking under it. So it's, like I said, it's not an urgent issue for us, but it allowed us to realize that some of that timeline for us is more immediate. Inside the building, we recognize that there's a lot of access and egress issues. There's not really anything on here that shows that specifically. The stairs are noticed. It's not ADA accessible, and when the building was built, ADA was not a thing. So the stairs especially, there's no way to get out of that first floor if you're in a wheelchair and the elevators aren't working. You could hit your head. There's a lot of things that we need to change inside the building that aren't necessarily immediate needs, but they're going to be part of that larger project for the future of the library. Another thing that was interesting that came out of the facilities assessment is recognizing that a lot of our existing, what we call staff space or storage space, is being used in a way that made more sense 20, 30, 40 years ago. So what's typical now in libraries is about 80% of the space is the public space, public use. You've got your books, you've got your meeting rooms, you've got your chairs, whatever it might be, your programming space. And then roughly 20% is for staff space. If you see our lower level, and for those of you that have been in the library and utilize the library, you can't necessarily get from one end of the lower level to the other end of the lower level. So that's one of those egress issues. But you'll see in the picture, all of the gray is actually not public space. So in terms of future design, turning that space over to the public is going to be a priority for us. So this is all things that came out of the facility assessment. And when combined with this strategic planning feedback, these are the design values that have been kind of coming up to the surface as people seeing the library as a place to connect with their community. So again, having those meetings, having committee work done, working from the library, connecting to the outdoor space. So in terms of design value, civic prominence. And this was something that came up early in the conversation when we started talking about renovating the spaces. Do we stay here? Do we stay part of downtown? And that's definitely a priority. It's a priority for our board. It's our priority for the staff. It's a priority for me. Being part of the redevelopment of Richmond and being part of the downtown, we're considered a landmark. People come into the library as part of their routine, and being a draw for the community is something that's going to continue to be very important to us. Some of the other feedback that we got is to be more vibrant, be more welcoming. Our ramp is a perfect example. I can't tell you the number of people that I've talked to who have said, I'd love to come to the library, but I can't make it up the ramp. So when we talk about ADA and accessibility, these are some of the things that we are recognizing that we need to work on in the future when we start renovating. Embracing technology, celebrating art and history. So when we go back to the case for significant renovations, we did our comprehensive facilities planning. We identified things in the strategic plan that we needed to look at in terms of the facility. We know a lot of our building systems are approaching end of life. We need to expand our public areas, have some more of that staff space or storage space turned over to the public. There's a lot of staff and operational inefficiencies. So in terms of operations behind closed doors, there's a lot of we need to go all the way across this way in order to do X, Y, Z. And then there's building and utility inefficiencies. Like I said, a perfect example is you have to go down these stairs if you want to get to this part of the building, but you need to go back upstairs and go down these stairs if you want to be this part of the building. So that brings us to where we're at today. So we started, the next step was the master planning process. We've gotten all this feedback from the community for the strategic plan. We know what the facility, the issues of this facilities are, but what does that mean for the future of the library in terms of design? What does this renovation look like? What all needs to take place? So we continued with Kevin McCurdy from LWC. He's been performing our master planning process. So the goals from that were to address the concerns identified in facilities assessment, opportunities to utilize the existing building components. This was something that was really important. Again, coming back to, okay, we decided we want to stay in this space. We want to try to use as much of the existing structure as possible. We know the roof and the exterior needs to come off, but we want to use as much of the skeleton as possible. So this is another goal of the master planning process that's taking place right now. Identify and prioritize community wants and needs. Define staff tasks and workplace requirements. Determine the building organization, which is happening right now actually. And then address site and connections to the surrounding community. What does that look like in terms of timeline? So we started in December. We had a couple of public forums. And that first public forum was to introduce to the community what's going on with the library. I've had a lot of conversations where people are saying, the library's fine, and it looks great, but you peel that back a little bit and to be able to say, this is what's actually happening with with our facility itself. We have a building committee, which is this charrette. We started that in January, and that's for the committee to start looking at design, like where does the youth department go? Where should this business center go? Where does the future archive space go? We're going to have our second public forum at the end of this month to show that first iteration of a floor plan, and then we'll kind of rinse and repeat a few times. The plan is to have the master planning done by May-ish, and then introduce that to the county commissioners and the council in June. We expect this to be a multi-million-dollar project and anticipate working with getting a bond. So next steps, what we're doing right now, and next steps is performing the site analysis, actually looking at, okay, we've got Elstro Plaza right next door. Here's how the roads actually go. And this is an example. This is actually Dayton Metro's site analysis picture, but it gives you an idea looking at pedestrian, especially when we're talking about the elder beer. We're going to have a lot of residents coming into our library. How are they accessing our space in the future? What does it look like if you're driving into the library? We've already identified some issues in terms of getting a car in and out of our parking lot. So those are some of the things that we're looking at right now. And then the building program, again, this isn't our space, this is Dayton, but just as an example, we just had a meeting yesterday, in fact, where we're just looking at everything. Where does the marketplace go? Where does the business center go? Where are the entrances at? That's been a big part of the conversation. It has actually driven a lot of our floor planning. Adjacencies, again, we have a park right across the street. We are in a really great place. How does staff access the space in the future? And then, like I said, our next public forum is at the end of the month. And then, so the next phase, once we're finished with the master planning, is the design phase. Hopefully, we'll get the support from the community and from the council in terms of moving forward with the bond. And then we'll most likely continue working with Kevin in terms of a design for our future renovation. And that's where we're at. So we originally came to you all for financial support for our master plan. However, government unit funding as it is, we ended up actually paying for that in 2024. We had the existing funding for that. So we're leaving the ask on the table, the request on the table, because we do know that we're going to be spending significantly more on the design phase of that. So that's why we decided to stick with the existing request and come back today. So that was a lot of information thrown at you. I appreciate your time. Any questions that I can answer?
A lot going on.
What's that?
That's a lot going on.
There is a lot going on. It's exciting, but also very, it's overwhelming, but it's all good stuff. And we think the timing is actually advantageous because there is so much in terms of revitalizing Richmond and construction. If there's going to be a lot of noise and a lot of things happen and a lot of equipment, we should be a part of it now rather than 5 years down the road when things are really bad in the building, and now we're just adding to the stress.
Right. Now, the ask is for $40,000 today. Is there additional funding that will be asked in the future, or what's your projection?
Not that I'm aware of. Yeah, originally, and I will share with you, we've invested about $100,000 so far between the facility assessment and the master plan. The master plan was around $80,000, which was where the original $40,000 ask was for. I don't know how much the design phase is going to be. I know it's going to be significantly more, but we hadn't considered that we would be coming back to ask for more funding.
We have our own funding mechanisms
Yeah.
and, from local income tax and then a bond that we plan to ask for this summer.
Yeah.
So this is supplemental to what you're already
Yeah.
been able to acquire.
Sort of to get the ball rolling on this project ahead
Exactly.
of being able to ask the public for the bond. That's what this would support.
And you expect closure of the library during some of these activities?
So what we're currently looking at, because we know that, we don't know a lot. We know that the brick is cracking, and that's concerning to me. So what we're thinking we're going to need to do is we're planning on finding a temporary location. We anticipate moving into that before the renovation starts so that we can avoid anything major. we're struggling finding a place right now. We were hoping to find a place by the fall, but no matter what, we're going to have to find a temporary location. The renovation is going to be so significant. There's no way for us to stay in the building with as much that needs to be done with the building. And we actually had a tour of about 14 other libraries that have just finished renovations, and they all hands down said, get out of the building. It costs more money and it takes twice as long. It's very disruptive to the community. So we want to be able to transition so that we're not closed for an extended period of time, so that we're able to continue offering library services. It just may be out of a different location for a couple of years.
And you've accounted for any funds that would be required for that relocation?
Yeah, we do.
Have you had any interaction with the county yet as to their support or lack thereof for a bond?
What's that? I'm sorry.
Have you talked to the county yet about your budget and about the funding of the original?
We haven't yet. We've had some preliminary conversations, more informal. Once we're done with the master planning, that's when we're going to actually know how much this is going to cost.
Right.
If we walked in today and just fixed the things that we needed to fix, it would be $9 million just to fix the brick, just to, update the staircase, just to create egresses. If we completely rebuilt the existing structure, it would be around $32 million. So we're thinking it's going to be somewhere in the middle until we have that number. We don't want to formally come to the council, but they are aware informally that this is what's happening and it will be an ask.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
And Beth, beg your pardon,
Go ahead, Mike.
this request ticks all the boxes, and AJ
Yes.
said everything, we're good there?
Yes.
Okay.
And I believe that we do have a recusal on the commission.
Yeah, I'll have to recuse myself because I have a financial relationship with MRL, so I won't be voting today.
No, my question was simply just, so the temporary location, you're thinking 1 to 2 years, is that?
We'll be inside a temporary location.
Okay.
Yeah, most likely. We anticipate the renovation taking roughly 2 years, so that's how long we would be in the temporary location. Yeah. If you know any good places, let me know.
I do.
Got some thoughts, huh? Are there other questions? Hearing none, do I hear a motion?
So moved.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made and seconded. Would you call the roll, please?
Michael Bloom,
Aye.
Jenny Lahman,
Aye.
Kathy Lucid,
Aye.
Gary Turner,
Aye.
4 in favor, 1
Motion.
recusal.
Motion passes.
Thank
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that information with us today. Second item on our agenda today is Resolution Number 4, 2025, a resolution of the Richmond Redevelopment Commission pledging tax increment and tax payment to bonds, authorizing the use of tax increment fund to forgivable loan in the amount of $4 million. And I believe we have a number of people speaking to that today. I will tell you that in looking over the financials and some of the numbers, it does appear that these numbers are rather fluid. So if you can just bear with us and have patience with us as we go through this and help us understand specifically where all this funding is coming from and what impact it has on us.
I'll start with a quick overview of the project. This project will bring 150 luxury apartment homes to downtown. The location is at 6th and Main. And we will have 7% of those units will be studio, 65% will be 1 bedroom, and 28% will be 2 bedroom. The average rent expected is $1,350 per month. There will also be a first floor commercial space that will be available, and you'll see they've included some images of some of the amenities that you'll see there. There'll be some co-working space, a fitness center, bike storage, pet spa, courtyard, and a pool. When you look at the overall project, you'll see that the project will cost approximately $37 million is the estimate. They are anticipating construction starting in April of this year. and they will be targeting their project demographics that they're targeting 70% young professionals, 25% empty nesters, and the balance of that would be other residents. And they are projecting that 50% of these residents will be new residents to Richmond with an average household income of $75,000. And at this point, to talk more in detail about the documents that we're considering and the financial pieces for that, I'm going to invite Jason Semler up from Baker Tilly to talk about the projections. You have a document in front of you that is dated February the 3rd, which includes the financial information that Jason will be sharing with you today.
Thank you, Beth. Good afternoon. Again, Jason Semler of Baker Tilly, serving as financial advisor for the Redevelopment Commission. As Beth mentioned, she passed out before the meeting a report that we had prepared dated February 3rd. This is a report that we also presented to the council that evening. And I thought I would kind of go through these schedules to help explain where some of the numbers are coming from and how they support the incentive that's being discussed for the project and the pledge of tax increment and the bonds that are also being discussed. As I go through these schedules, if you have any specific questions about that schedule, feel free to stop me and be happy to address it at that time, if that's okay.
Yes, thank you.
But if you want to turn to page 2, just kind of talking about the project that Beth just described with the 150 apartments. We did talk to the county assessor some time ago to ask for their guidance on what the assessment might be for such a project. And based upon preliminary information that we were able to provide them from the developer, we're looking at the total assessment being about $16.3 million. If you remember, the Redevelopment Commission did create a new allocation area. We pulled these parcels out of the downtown TIF area and created the downtown allocation area number 2, specifically for this development. So the base, since the city owned the project, the base is 0. So all the new development that would be generated from this project would be captured. Based upon the tax rates, plus the circuit breaker credits that the development would receive, we're looking at that it would generate about $336,000 of property taxes each year, based upon that estimated assessed value. Working with Beth and developer, we've discussed pledging 90% of those taxes each year towards a bond to help incentivize the project. So that's where you see 90% of the $336,000 is that $302,980 that you see there. So the remaining $34,000 that would be coming in if these estimates come to fruition, you'd be keeping and be setting aside in a separate allocation fund, just like your other TIF areas that you can use for other projects that are in server benefiting this area.
When they give you the assessed value, is that occupied?
Yes.
That, and what, 80%, 70, whatever?
I believe they assumed 100%.
Is that, okay. So the number could be, obviously, I think in your disclaimers, you said these numbers, Kathy said, are somewhat fluid.
They are, yeah, and the assessments, and especially for apartments, I mean, they change annually, especially for apartments. They're kind of based upon the income approach. And because of the fluidness of the assessments and, what will actually get built compared to what's estimated, and the bonds, if you turn to the next page, and that we're talking about, they're going to be paid from 90% of the tax increment that we just calculated. But we're also requiring, and the banks are also requiring a taxpayer payment guarantee from the developer, so that for whatever reason, if the TIF comes in less than anticipated and that 90% isn't sufficient to cover the bond payment, the developer will come in and cover the shortfall. There's nothing else being pledged from the Redevelopment Commission, no other TIF from any of your other areas, no other revenues from the city. It's just the TIF, 90% of the TIF from this project.
And we have that all in a written document?
Those are in the documents that you have in front of you that Lisa will be going over as well.
Okay.
So on page 3, the bonds that are payable from the tax increment is a portion of the incentive. If you look at the top of the page, again, as Beth mentioned, it's about a $37 million total project. The city and the county and other entities agreed to contribute about $15 million of an incentive. So if you add those two numbers at the top, the $14,431,000 net proceeds available, plus the interest during the bond, the $568,000, those two total numbers add up to the $15 million incentive. Then we have some professional fees and bank fees of $245,000 for a total project of $15,245,000. And then you can see down at the bottom is that total project is funded from basically 6 different sources, kind of working from the bottom on up. The Redevelopment Commission has agreed to, I think $4 million is the max that the Redevelopment Commission has discussed contributing towards this project. We're really only looking about $3,495,000. That $4 million that was allowed, again, not to exceed amount, that was because when that document was written, we didn't know exactly what the interest rate on the bonds were. There were still some things that were unknown. Those have been confirmed with the bank if the project continues as anticipated. So that the amount that we think that you will be spending will be closer to that $3,500,000. The Wayne County government, the county has contributed $2 million. There's $2.5 million of the regional's ready amount that they received was awarded towards this project. The developer is also receiving $3.6 million of redevelopment tax credits for this project. There's a Wayne County Foundation loan that has been granted for $1 million. And then based upon the TIF stream that we just discussed, and I'll go through a little bit more, the TIF would support a bond of about $2,650,000. So those 6 different buckets of revenue total to the $15,245,000 total project.
Okay, I have a couple things. First of all, these are going through local banks, correct?
Correct.
And First Bank is one of the banks?
Yes. First Bank, Richmond, and Wayne Bank are the 2
Okay.
banks. And they're willing to purchase half of the bonds each.
And I believe, Mike, you have a concern, right, in regards to your,
Well, I serve on the board at First Bank, so I'm going to be recusing myself from any vote on that.
so just want to make sure that recusal is on record. As we look at this funding, a couple questions. First of all, you said the total project was about $37 million. And we're looking at $15.2 million when you add up all these sources of funding. What happens if the project exceeds $37 million?
The developer would come up with any difference.
Okay. And let's just go down these numbers one by one so we understand the source. The Economic Development Revenue Bond for 2.65, that is coming from where? And how will that show up on our reports?
That will be another bond payment that you will be paying from the tax increment that will be collected from this development in this downtown allocation area number 2.
So Beth, that will appear under our bond obligations/appropriations?
Correct.
As we look at our finances?
Correct. On our first page of our financials, where we have the bond obligations, appropriations, you'll see we have a list of 3 bonds currently. This would be added as a 4th line item. And then that annual bond payment, which Jason will get to when he gets to the amortization schedule, that will be the amount that we'll see there on an annual basis.
So we won't see 2.65 on that. We'll see what that annual amount is for the year.
Correct.
On our, okay. And then we have the Wayne County Foundation loan, which is a loan that basically is coming to the Redevelopment Commission.
Correct.
And the interest rate on that loan,
It's 5%.
okay. The redevelopment tax credit, that's just a straight credit, right?
Correct. Directly to the developer.
That's something the developer is applying for.
Excellent. And the ready funds?
That is something that we applied for and received. That is the funding that was used for the demolition. And then that is the funding that we're using to fund the contract that we currently have for the civil site work package that is commencing later this month.
Okay. And Wayne County is providing $2 million, correct?
Yes.
And then that leaves 3.4 from the Redevelopment Commission, in addition to the $1 million loan that is being provided by the Wayne County Foundation.
Correct.
Is the Wayne County Foundation loan forgivable? You said it's a 5% rate.
No, we would be repaying that over a 5-year period.
And what would we see on our financials if we approve this?
So then we would add a line item for that loan from the Wayne County Foundation, and then annually, we would see that annual payment amount on our financials as an obligation.
It would be just listed under the normal list of obligations, you're saying?
Correct.
Okay.
And we currently have earmarked 3.3 million.
Correct.
So we have earmarked 3.3 million of the 3.495. We have not earmarked anything for the repayment of the $1 million to the Wayne County Foundation.
Correct.
I know you explained it once, but tell me again, why are we going through the Wayne County Foundation? Why is that, since it's our money?
When we did the cash flow for this project back in '22 and '23, the commission did not have the cash balance to support that additional $1 million. So we looked for other opportunities to fund and fill that gap.
So they stepped up.
And so they stepped up with their community impacting investing fund. We are in a different cash position now, so should the commission determine that they would prefer to pay the cash up front, that is the commission's decision. We could go ahead and take that $1 million out of our cash balance and save that 5% interest, or we could make the annual payments over a 5-year period and make the interest and retain more cash in our fund for other projects.
I think that's something we need to seriously consider, because if we can avoid paying the 5% interest, that's a savings for us.
How much would that be approximately?
Let me see, I had that with me. It's a little over $100,000.
Have to be if we're going to pay it in 5
Yeah,
years.
yeah. I mean, I think that's a significant savings. If
I
we're,
like your math, but
if we're in a cash position to not have to rely upon that loan and pay the interest, I think we should seriously consider it. I think it's been very great that the Wayne County Foundation offered to step up. I would hope that if we make the decision to pay the $1 million ourselves now out of our cash, that if there's future projects that we can't finance, that perhaps we could go back to them and ask for some assistance again. But I guess I'd like to take that on a project-by-project basis.
Sure, we can absolutely do that.
Now,
If
if
we-
we decide to do that, what's the process?
That's
exactly.
what I was going to ask.
I believe we would amend our TIF pledge resolution to add the $1 million. So then it would be a max of $5 million instead of $4 million in resolution number 4 that you have before you.
And
would
this is
that-
coming to council tonight, isn't it?
The bond, to,
I'll go through the schedule and who's
Okay. Okay, we'll let Jason maybe finish the financial review, and then we'll talk about the mechanics of it all. Is that okay with everybody?
Yep. Before you continue, I have a question. I don't know if this is the place. If not, tell me when it is the place. Whose money is being paid first? The money, the developer, are we equal, they're paying somewhere at the beginning, or is this 15 million being paid out upfront first, and then before any of the developer's money goes into the project? How is that working?
Was that listed in the project agreement?
it was in the project agreement.
And of which
that-
way?
That our money is upfront
Is
at
first.
closing. And they will have all of their financing secured prior to closing.
We will know that. And then are you going to touch on clawbacks and some of that stuff too?
Yes,
later on?
Lisa has that.
Okay, all right, very good. Thank you.
Thank you for bearing with us.
No,
Please
that's why we're
continue.
here, to answer any of your questions. Any other questions on page 3? Page 4 is the amortization schedule or the repayment schedule for the $2,650,000 bonds. As you can see there, we're looking at a taxable interest rate of 7.5%. You can see the first 3 or 4 years there, it's interest only, and that's being funded from the bond proceeds. So that's why that interest, that $500,000 of interest on the first page, that we wanted to count that as part of the incentive to the developer, is because it frees up from what he would have had to pay any shortfalls.
May I ask one question here again? Sorry. That 99,375, which we see in the first year, is that the number that we would see on our report, Beth?
Actually, those first 5 or 6 payments, that's going to be paid from the bond proceeds. So your first payment from the TIF won't occur until 2028.
Okay.
So-
So we would see that, what number?
We won't see anything on our financials till 2028.
And which number would we see in '28?
The 247,000, on the far right side.
Okay. Okay.
So the first few payments, what we'll do is at closing, that $2.6 million, part of it will be set aside in a construction account to help pay for the incentive for the project. And then $568,000 will be set aside in a capitalized interest account to pay that interest for those first 6 payments.
Excellent.
And the rate is 7.5.
Correct.
Can we prepay this sometime down the road if we decide?
That's something we're still talking to the banks.
Okay.
But the documents allow for that. So now we're just negotiating on what the banks are willing to accept. So then the next page, page 5, compares that $302,000 of tax increment that we're projecting from the development. We're setting aside $5,000 for administrative fees to help pay the bank, the trustee bank that will monitor the construction account and the capitalized interest account, and also make sure that the payments are made. That leaves about $297,000. As I mentioned, the annual payment's about $247,000 a year. That leaves about $50,000 remaining each year, and that's something the banks also negotiated, was that they wanted to, again, to kind of cover themselves, that there'd be more than enough estimated TIF to cover the bond payment. But again, if for some reason that there isn't sufficient revenue to cover that $247,000, the trustee bank will notify the developer of the shortfall, and they'll cover the shortfall to make the banks whole.
I don't understand the illustrated coverage percentage. Tell me what that,
Yeah, that's,
Sorry.
if you take the tax increment, the $302,000 over the debt service, the
Oh, I see.
247. So
Okay.
basically means you can cover your payment 1.2
Thank you.
times.
that makes sense. Thanks.
And that just allows in case the assessment doesn't come in as high, or the tax rates fall, or
Right.
legislation might do something crazy with assessments or taxes.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Be happy to answer any other questions.
Very good. Appreciate your input and your patience with us.
Is there a motivational perspective for the developer to see that this assessed value is kept where it needs to be? Because it's going to cost them one way or the other, I suppose, if they're not maintaining the property, that its assessed value goes down. But on the other hand, they don't want to have those continual out-of-pocket expenses, so they would be incented to keep the property well-maintained.
Yeah, this is more from the developers' internal accounting, but I believe they can write off their property taxes. But if there was a shortfall and they have to make taxpayer payments, they probably couldn't write those off. So there's probably some tax advantage to keep their taxes at least high enough to make the bond payments.
So they would be incented to see that,
Yeah.
okay.
Other questions for Jason? Thank you. Lisa, help us understand all these other details.
Afternoon, good
Hi.
afternoon. Yeah, first I'll just let you know that the Redevelopment Commission, and you've done this before, but you are a part of a group of governmental bodies here at the city that are approving this project. So at the February 3rd meeting, we did introduce the bond ordinance to the council and provided them with a presentation. Darren Kittner was here to present the project to them. Jason provided the numbers. I went through the bond ordinance and the other documents. And then there's been a notice of public hearing of your Economic Development Commission that will be held later today. And then tonight, we will go back to the council, who will hold their own public hearing, and then consider final adoption of the bond ordinance. So the Redevelopment Commission is an extremely important position in this because you are the money. Okay, so you are the pledge of the property taxes that become project TIF to the project, and then the pledge of funds on hand to help with this waterfall that Jason was describing to you. So this is an important cog in the entire wheel, but it does take all three of those bodies to come together and want to approve the project. So with respect to Resolution 4-2025, Jason mentioned a lot of different things in here. So we are looking at a pledge of 90% of what the project will generate. And as Jason mentioned, to the extent that that's not sufficient, there is a taxpayer agreement that the developer must sign that basically says if their taxes aren't high enough, they will make up the difference. The key there, though, is that if they don't do that, this becomes a first lien on their entire project property. So it's in front of any of their mortgage, just like a property tax lien. So this becomes a property tax lien on their project, which they don't want. They wouldn't be able to sell it, those types of things. So, when they can't sell it for 10 years anyway, by the way. The taxpayer agreement itself is an important piece of the entire puzzle and incentive for them to keep their property taxes and the value up there so that they're not paying those shortfall payments. There's also two other requirements. The banks are requiring, and the project agreement required it as well from the city, a completion guarantee, and then also a payment guarantee. So there will be another guarantor that's not an LLC, or there's an LLC and a corporation that's going to be a guarantor on the debt service payments directly to the banks as well. So there's a lot of belt and suspenders with respect to making sure those bonds get paid. And then, let's see here. So basically then on your waterfall, you went through that, the 1 million foundation. If you do decide that maybe you want to go ahead and increase your authorized amount of cash in this resolution, you could do that and then kind of decide how you want to go about the foundation loan. I do know that, as Beth mentioned, and she could speak to it a lot better than I can, I do think it's important from the foundation's perspective that they are providing funds from their community investment impact situation. So maybe even if you don't want to take it out for 5 years, if you take it out for a year or something, so they get some of that impact as well in the community. Those may be things that you all want to talk about with them. So I think there's a lot of different positives to go on here. But I agree 5 years at 5%, if you have the money, is probably not what you're looking to do. As far as the forgiveness and clawbacks, the loan agreement does require them to complete the project and have up to 3 years of operations before all of this waterfall would be forgiven. If they don't do that, then it could be up to a 10-year repayment at 7.5% interest. Those numbers come from, the 7.5 is the bond interest from the local banks, and then they have 10 years before they could sell it to a non-related entity. So that's kind of where that repayment idea of the 10 years, 7.5%. So that's another thing, they're not going to want to have that hanging around. So the sooner they get through that, the sooner all of these waterfalls are forgiven, if that makes sense. So I'm happy to take questions on the forgiveness, on the pledge, on the security at this point.
I know how each community is a little bit different, and how Wayne County Foundation's involvement is probably different than others, but is this similar to the setup that they have had in the other similar-sized communities that they've done these projects in? Do you know?
I don't know the answer to that.
A lot of the other communities that they've done in, when we talk to them, other communities built them parking garages. Other communities contributed 20+ million in cash to projects that were similar size. So when you look at other projects that they've done, we've made pretty much the smallest incentive package of their most recent projects.
Okay. Yeah, and 6.1 million of this total is from, like, say, the tax credits and the Ready Fund. So both of those are state funds or state credits that are being put in here. So they're not, the city is not behind them, nor does the city have to repay those.
Right.
So that's a good chunk of the funds here. So in your Resolution 4, we get down to the bottom of page 2, where we actually have your action items. Number 1 is that you're making a finding that the pledge of the tax increment on hand to fund the redevelopment loan will help accomplish the plan for the area. We did, Jason mentioned that we carved out this site so that this project has to stand on its own. It will be 90% of its own generated TIF, not the entire area. We also amended the plan, the economic development plan, for that to include this project so that you can properly use TIF to pay for it. Number 2 is the irrevocable pledge of paying the debt service, so the 90% of the TIF to the debt service, and the amount not to exceed $4 million. Also keep in mind that we do, now that we know the interest rates, we do believe the 3.495 is the final cash contribution, not $4 million. So you do have another a little over 500,000 in this authorization already. If you decided to maybe front 500,000 and take 500,000 of the loan, repay that back over a shorter period.
Okay.
So you do have some flexibility here, even if you don't increase this amount today. And then in section 3, although when
Please,
you're
if I
pledging.
could- If I
Yes,
could
go
for a
ahead.
moment, if we did decide to increase, would we be increasing the $1 million onto the 3.4 so that it becomes 4.495 in the resolution?
You could, so that we increase this to 4.5 as the maximum cash contribution.
Okay.
Right now, we're not showing the waterfall
Right.
in this resolution, because this is solely for the redevelopment's contribution, not for all the other contributions. All the other contributions are in the bond ordinance, loan agreement, the documents that the council is approving. Okay.
Thank you.
And then in section 3, you're simply reserving the right to enter into other obligations payable from your portion of the tax increment. Frankly, though, if you're pledging 90%,
It's not much.
it's really more cash on hand to help fund some things that need to be done in serving or benefiting that area, more than additional debt. But you are reserving that right to do that. So that's really the resolution. I know it's short and sweet, but it's a large project. There's a lot going on. So we're happy to, as the three of us, can answer questions here.
What's the process for us being able to make a decision about Wayne County Foundation? What's the timeline? How do we do that?
I believe that we could do that today.
Okay.
That's within our purview to make that decision.
But we're going to have to, if we do that, we're going to have to pay everything up front, since all of our contributions are coming up front. We've got $4.5 million, a little over. That would pretty much leave us, what, $78,000?
Well, we've got 3.3 already earmarked.
Out of that, oh, that is net of that, isn't it? So
Yeah.
it would be another.
Yeah.
Okay,
So it'd be roughly another $1 million.
right.
So then our bottom line now is 3,617,000. That's with all of those in there. Is that correct? If I'm
No,
looking
our-
at the,
On the very last page, the total available for new projects is the 4,578,246.31.
Email sheet here.
We need
Right.
just
I
a
didn't
moment
have
to
that
get
one, I'm sorry.
oriented
I don't
here.
have a copy of that one.
Yeah, yeah.
I've got that one
second
here if you
page.
need it.
So that's our current amount. We have 3.3
We
earmarked,
need to figure out how to use the tech park.
so
Wait a
it would
We
Well,
can
it's,
do
be
that.
another $1 million or so. So we'd be down to about
You're gonna have
3.5
technology.
million.
So 3.3, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
which is not a bad position to be in, based upon where we've been in the past.
This is,
Are you foreseeing any, you know more of the inner workings of some future projects that haven't come to us yet? Because, do we spend our money now, not our money, the Redevelopment Commission money now?
We take it all very
upfront?
personally, like it's our money.
Right,
We're
but
protected.
if there's anything that's out there that would be so impactful, especially with all the things going on downtown and in the depot.
I mean, I think there are going to be some projects that are going to be coming forward for future economic development bonds. There will be some projects that may be in need of some additional incentive, but at this point, I couldn't really put a good number on that. But as Kathy indicated, the foundation, they might be projects that might be available that the commission could approach the foundation in the future to partner on a new project.
I also think, or feel that the Wayne County Foundation to step up and be a part of this project was a very big issue with, a lot of work went into it with their board and
Yes.
all the other powers that be. So, I mean, that leaves me, we don't want to pay the interest, I get that, and understand that. But keeping them open and letting them know that our desire to
Absolutely.
work with them in the future on projects like this.
Absolutely. We would meet with them and have a conversation and share the thoughts and share the fact that we are in a different position than we were currently when we were looking to fill this gap, and let them know how appreciative we are of their offer and the work that has gone into this. I think some of the work that's gone into this in developing some of those loan documents are documents that they're going to be using for other projects as well. So as they were going through that process of developing what their promissory note would look like, what all of those things would look like, they had to do that with the first project. And at that time, we were the first project. So I think that the work that has been done will be utilized on other projects as well. It won't be lost.
Okay.
So long as the Wayne County Foundation understands, if we make this decision, how much we truly appreciated them stepping up for that. That's quite a leap in the community, and quite a leap for them, and we appreciate it. And, we may be back.
Not a lot of communities have such a foundation, so you're lucky.
Exactly.
Or local banks that are really willing to step up the way your local banks are.
And I think for them, it's a bit of a wash if they contribute the $1 million. They're going to be losing income from that $1 million, which would be then offset by our 5% to them. So for them, they're receptive to us saying thank you, but we've found that we've got enough, and that's not.
I believe so.
And they're not going to be counting on that income because.
No, the funds are already invested,
Right,
and this would
right.
be some additional income. And I know they have other projects that they're considering funding as well. So
Okay.
this would allow them to utilize this fund on other projects.
I'm inclined to lean, I know this is independent of that, but I'd rather save us the money. What is that, 50,000 a year, just
Yeah,
year one, and
I think it makes sense.
I agree.
So if we decide to do this, we would be revising Resolution 4, 2025 to an amount of $4.5 million, if you round up.
4.5, that's what I was thinking. That gives you, now that we know that the 3.495 is your contribution, then 4.5 million would be enough for the 1 million.
And that would be a max.
That's a max.
Okay.
Not to exceed.
So if you decided that you're going to go ahead and take 500,000 from their loan and pay the other 5 and then pay them off, then you have all kinds of flexibility at that point. But you have the full 1 million covered if you want to do that.
Okay. So we wouldn't need necessarily a resolution to not take the foundation loan. We would simply need to revise our current resolution.
Simply need
to
the
cover it.
authority to spend up to 4.5 million of your TIF funds on hand
Okay,
for this project, yes.
makes sense.
So we can make the decision today, and then the documents get altered later, is what you're saying. Got it.
And when would those dollars be removed from our,
At closing, so more than likely at some point in March.
By mid-March.
so it would be in the next several months, next month?
Oh, yeah. we'll see
Okay,
it pretty
all
soon.
right.
I
I've
believe.
heard 2028 for some other things, so just wanted
Oh,
to make sure.
okay, yeah.
I didn't think it was
Yes,
that long.
2028 is when we'll start making payments
Okay.
on the bond.
Yeah, I believe the developer for the tax credits has to close the whole financing by the end of March. And on the construction loan, we have seen the commitment from Lake City Bank that they have committed the funds for as the construction lender. So and because the banks, your local banks were requiring to see that commitment, so we do have it.
Excellent. So I think what we have before us is entertaining a motion to revise Resolution Number 4, 2025, from $4 million to $4.5 million.
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Would you call the roll, please?
Jenny Lahman,
Aye.
Kathy Lucid,
Aye.
Gary Turner,
Aye.
Allison Zeidel.
Aye.
4 in favor, 1 recusal.
Thank you. Passes. Thank you very much.
If you could, and Beth can hold on to this, if you sign this, the signature page is not on any of those numbers. I will provide her with a replacement resolution with the 4.5 in it.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you again, Jason, for bearing with us as we go through this. I mean, there's a lot of money on the table here, and this has been challenging, I think, to get our arms around it and make sure we understand it and that we're doing the right thing for the city. So I appreciate your patience with us. Okay. Is there any other business to come before the commission today? Hearing no further business, we're adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You are watching Whitewater Government Television, WGTV, Channel 11, part of the Whitewater Community Television family of stations.